Hey there folks, welcome to the Profit Logic YouTube channel. My name is Andrew Bloom, and if we have not met before, I am a PhD student in business with a concentration in accounting, and I run a small accounting firm called Profit Logic, which offers bookkeeping assistance to small businesses and real estate investors. And I created this channel to help educate small business owners like yourself on how to properly do accounting and bookkeeping, especially when you're just starting out in business. And put in another way, I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on accounting education, so you don't have to. Okay, in today's video, I'm not just going to give you a simple little tutorial. I'm going to show you over the span of a course how to use QuickBooks Online, especially if you're just going to go about this yourself, whether you're getting ready for tax season or you're wanting to look to do your books regularly as you're starting your business. This is a full tutorial that's going to cover how to use the most essential parts of QuickBooks so that you can do your bookkeeping accurately and hassle-free. And if at any point in this video, from what I'm showing you, if it still feels overwhelming or you just don't want to spend the time doing any of this work, I'd be more than happy to do your bookkeeping for you and ensure that it's done accurately. So if you want to know more about the bookkeeping services I offer, head on over to profitlogic.com where you can set up a time to speak with me or send me an email, and I'd be more than happy to help you out. All right, so let's get started. So QuickBooks is the gold standard of bookkeeping software that you'll find in the US market. It's been around for decades. Once upon a time, it was a really clunky software on the desktop, and nowadays it's mostly cloud-based with QuickBooks Online, and it's the most widely used accounting and bookkeeping software that you will find CPAs, EAs, bookkeepers across the US will happily use with their clients. Now, I'm gonna note, if you haven't figured it out already, QuickBooks has a little bit of a learning curve. Some of its features are just not intuitive if you don't have an accounting background, and there's just a lot of new features, especially in the last couple of years, ever since with the new introduction of AI features. Intuit has a tendency to consistently and constantly change features in QuickBooks, so you're always kind of having to stay on top of learning whatever new software development comes out next. So if you're just coming into it now and using QuickBooks for the first time and you're feeling overwhelmed, that's okay. It's completely normal, and that's why we're here doing this simple course together today. Another thing to note about QuickBooks, it can sometimes be a pricey software, although there are a number of different plans available, which I'm going to show you soon, that depending on your business's needs, you might be able to get away with something that's a little cheaper from their subscription plan. But if it still feels kind of daunting or too expensive to use in your business, maybe you're just a solopreneur with a side hustle, I do cover another software on this YouTube channel called Wave. I'll link a video up top on how to use Wave. It's going to be the same version of this course, just for Wave, and then you can decide which software is most appropriate for your business. All right, so a quick little overview of what we're going to do today. In this course, I'm going to start out by showing you different QuickBooks subscription plans, give you an idea of which might be appropriate dependent on what size of business you have and what kind of budget you have for bookkeeping. And from there, together we'll sign up for a trial of one of their subscription plans so that I can go into the books and show you how to use on a fresh set of books. And throughout this course, I'm the kind of teacher where I don't want to just explain things. I want to show you. I want to make it a little interactive and easy to understand. And I find the best way to teach is usually through storytelling and using very visual examples and quizzes. So through this course, we're going to track the bookkeeping timeline of a new rental company, real estate investor company called Maple Street Rentals LLC. So I'm going to demonstrate how to use QuickBooks by setting up a set of books for them, and going over how to use different features by giving scenarios depicted in the business. So once we cover onboarding from there, we're going to go over just a general walkthrough of QuickBooks, the main dashboards, all the nav bar options, and the settings, and get a feel for what's in store, what's available to use in QuickBooks, get a lay of the land. And then we're going to go over how to set up a brand new set of books in QuickBooks. We're going to go over how to set up the chart of accounts, and I'll explain to you what the chart of accounts is and how to attune it to your own business without making mistakes. And then after that, we're gonna go into setting up things like your products and services in QuickBooks, invoices, estimates, and bills. After that, we'll add in some customers, go over all the sales and invoicing features, as well as vendor and bill payment features. From there, we'll go over how to add your bank to QuickBooks and what to do if you just want to manually upload statements because for whatever reason your bank account might not connect to QuickBooks. I'll show you how to do that, as well as how to use the bank feed, which is where you're going to spend most of your time in QuickBooks with categorizing transactions. And then we'll wrap up with reconciliation and generating reports in QuickBooks. And from all these different activities, you should be able to cover at least 90% of your bookkeeping needs, should you choose to use QuickBooks and DIY it yourself. Okay, so let's get started. So QuickBooks has quite a handful of options available for their different subscription plans. So when you go to products and services, or rather when you go to plans and pricing, you're going to probably see this page here. And currently it's February of 2026, so these prices may change over time, as well as the options available. So at first it seems like there's only 4 plans, but really I think there's a total of 8 plans. If you start up here, there's a tab for self-employed, a tab for small businesses, and a tab for mid-sized businesses. And each has a list of plans that are likely to be the best fit for that size business. So they do have a free plan. I honestly have not played with that before, so maybe that'll be another video in the future. I'm imagining there's very limited things you could do in there. They have Light with an expert assisted tax assistant, and another commonly used one, Simple Start. With small businesses, you have the continuing from the solopreneur, you have the Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, which is the most commonly used, or rather customer favorite. It's often the one that I see with the small to medium-sized businesses I work with in my own bookkeeping practice. And then there's Advance as well. And for mid-sized businesses, you have the Advance option. And then there's the Intuit Enterprise Suite, which is probably going to be personally crafted for a larger business for a larger fee. So I'm imagining if you're watching this, you're probably doing your books yourself, or you just want a good idea of how to use QuickBooks. So we're going to stick to one of these 2 tabs. We're not going to look at Free and Light, but I do want to look a little bit more at Simple Start. You know what? Let's just go into small businesses because that's going to cover most of you here. So we got Simple Start, Essentials, and Plus. Each of these plans will have a little bit of Intuit Intelligence. That's their AI assisted feature. It looks like they allow you to categorize expenses and income. It looks like these descriptions are for the customer. It doesn't really tell you exactly what the features are. So let's go down to top features. It looks like there's automated bookkeeping in all of them. Here you can use the invoice system and pay bills and include some ACH payments. In Simple Start, it looks like you probably get more reports. You can add employee time and they have appointment scheduling as well. And then in Essentials, in Plus, that was Essentials. In Plus, they have extra reports that you can run. You could track classes and locations if you are a real estate investor or have a real estate related business. This is usually a very handy tool. You could plan budgets, and then you could do some project tracking. Again, if you work in construction or just have a lot of expenses going out, then this might be more your speed. So if we go down to compare all features, we got Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, and Advance. They're going to list out what features are available in each. These are all the AI features, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not, how do I put it? I'm not enthusiastically enthralled by Intuit's AI features. Some are handy. For the most part, I'm going to be honest and say it doesn't feel like a big advancement. So I personally haven't played too much with this. Going down, though, to the more important aspects like accounting, basically from Essentials onward, you will get accounting AI. That means it's just going to try to suggest how to categorize your transactions using information from across your books and across the platform. You get to do some other things in Plus and Advance, such as AI-powered reconciliation, which can be really helpful if this is something you don't like to do. Moving on, you get various levels of support. And same thing with different tracking features, such as budgeting, you'll only find in Plus and Advance, as well as building custom reports. That's only available for Advance. Same thing for KPI tracking and analysis, or creating dashboards in QuickBooks, management reports. So basically Advanced would be the layer if you want to use your QuickBooks as a multifaceted tool. So not just accounting, but also kind of like using it kind of like a CRM, as well as a way to track strategy and relate it back to your business's finances. Under expenses and bill pay, you get all these features across all the accounts. Under sales and get paid, same thing, except you can only add a limited number of sales channels under Simple Start and Essentials. And what they mean by that could be importing transactions through their PayPal integration or a Stripe integration so that they automatically sync with QuickBooks. And in Plus and Advance, there's no limit there. Under Customer Hub, again, Plus and Advance are going to give you more of that CRM style of features, having some AI tools there with your customers, ways to manage your leads, be able to send contracts and use their e-signature program. So if you didn't want to use a third-party software service, then this could be, again, another way to just keep all of your business's strategy and finance under one software service. And you can have access to QuickBooks Time. This is like their time tracking for employees or contractors. That's available from Essentials onward. For project management, again, only in Plus and Advance. Same thing for inventory. If you are an inventory-based business, you want to be tracking your inventory through QuickBooks, you're going to use at least the Plus software package, if not the Advance. With sales tax, pretty much all features are available across these plans, except for sales tax AI, which I imagine gives you some information about any discrepancies. Lending is available across all accounts. Payroll, same thing, although it is an added service, especially if you want to file 1099s through QuickBooks. And then when it comes to having a connected platform, you are only allowed one user under Simple Start, up to 3 users in Essential, 5 users in Plus and 25 in Advance. And for accountant seats, this could be a bookkeeper like myself or a CPA. You get 2 in each software package and a third one in Advance. And so these are separate from the number of users available. Another difference are the quality of reports. You're going to have basic reports in Simple Start, Enhance in Essentials, comprehensive reports in Plus, and powerful reports in Advance. I'm not sure what that looks like, but it sounds pretty strong. Okay, so you also have a different number of custom fields available. This is a pretty cool feature for like invoices and whatnot. You can add your own data to track across. For example, if you have a list of sales reps and you want each invoice to be connected back to a sales rep, custom fields is a way to track that. There's different user management permissions. Having a control for that looks different across Essentials through Advance. And then class and location tracking is only available in Plus and Advance. Again, if you're in real estate or you have multiple locations for your business, you're going to want to use class and location tracking. So you're looking at Plus as your baseline subscription plan. There's also workflow automations. This is kind of like, again, a way to make QuickBooks your all-in-one CRM. You can create workflows dependent on when a client pays an invoice, doesn't pay an invoice, that kind of thing. And then you also have the feature of batch invoices and expenses in Advance, as well as a backup and restore in Advance. And all plans include app integrations, the ability to reach out and get some expert guidance, which you'd be surprised is actually a really useful tool when something just isn't working and you need to get some help with the software. And then there's a mobile app as well, which can be really useful if you're uploading receipts on the go and wanting to do some accounting on the go. So at the bottom, they have a find a plan that fits you. So for fun, I'll take you through Maple Street Rentals and how I came to the conclusion of which plan we're going to cover today. So they're asking, what are you looking to do? We want to manage my accounting, get paid. We're going to pretend that there's a couple of employees, but we're not going to track time. What do you want from your accounting solution? We want standard features. We might want a few extra things like bill management. Nah, we just want standard features. And what kind of accounting reports do you need? We'll go with the standard reports. It's going to be a pretty basic company. What kind of workers do you need to pay? We're going to say employees and contractors. What do you want from your payroll and HR solution? We're going to say just the standard features. What level of payroll support would you like? We're going to just say expert product support. What level of HR support would you like? We'll just stick with the support center and then see our results. So here it's suggesting simple start with the addition of payroll for our small business. So let's go ahead and check out simple start. So let's go back to CL plans. And then you might have this feature available. You get the choice between 50% off for 3 months or a free trial for 30 days. For the sake of creating an example exercise for this course, we just want to access a free trial. So we're going to turn off the 50% off coupon feature. And we'll come down to Simple Start and select Choose Plan. We're not going to do payroll. And here we'll sign up with a burner email, and if you don't have a burner email, it's 2026. I highly recommend you have some kind of email you can use to play around the internet and get extra time to do things like a free trial. Or in my case, make a bunch of free accounts for different YouTube videos. Okay, so I'm going to enter a burner email address and password, and we'll come back in a second and set up the books from there. They are going to ask for billing information when you're setting up, so make sure you put it on your calendar. You need to cancel this free trial if you're just doing it for the sake of poking around QuickBooks. Make sure you have a reminder set to cancel it because they will charge you at the end of the trial period. Okay, so we're ready to set up QuickBooks. Let's get started. So for starters, what's the business called? For the sample company, we have Maple Street Rentals, LLC. That's their legal business name. What we're using before QuickBooks, we're going to just say nothing. I'm new to this. They want to know here a little bit more about Maple Street Rentals. They're asking about industry. So for this, we're going to say real estate. And it looks like other activities related to real estate is the most related. They ask you your industry because they're going to help set up a chart of accounts that is going to try to be as related to your industry as possible. But that's something that we can customize later if it isn't a perfect fit. They also want to know the tax type. And in this case, you'll notice that even though I said this business is an LLC, all LLCs, when it comes to taxes as an entity, they're treated in one of three ways. So if you're a single member LLC, you're automatically going to be a disregarded entity. So pretty much a sole proprietor. If there were multiple owners, it would be a partnership. And if they had filed Form 2553, then they would have elected to be taxed as an S corporation. And another option is to be taxed as a C corporation. But for most of you watching, you're probably either going to be a sole proprietorship or a partnership. And in this case, we're going to say sole proprietor for this business. So what was your company's annual revenue last year? Since we're going to pretend this is a new business, we'll say less than $1 million. And now they're asking questions about the owner or whoever is setting up these books. So under what's your role, we're going to put owner or partner. The other options are employee, if you have someone doing this for you, or your bookkeeper accountant, if they're doing it for you, or other. And they also want to know how many employees. We're going to say, for now, just the owners. We'll hit next. Okay, now they're going to ask what you want to do in QuickBooks, and depending on what you select here, they're going to try to add these features to your dashboard. They're going to try to guide you to using these services, and a lot of them do connect to separate services in QuickBooks that either come at an additional fee or require setting up like a payment or a bank account with QuickBooks. So we're just going to skip this section and click skip for now. And it looks like they're going to generate the platform from here. All right, so here we are. If you've used QuickBooks a long time ago or even a couple years ago, you're going to notice it looks a lot different. They're immediately throwing a lot of different tutorials and setups. I'm going to X out of all of these. When you first sign up, they are going to try to guide you along. Over here, we see a list of tasks that come with setting up the basics and setting, going over accounting, and basically a lot of things we're going to cover in this course, including some ongoing tasks. But we'll just X out this for now. So we're just going to start from the dashboard. Here at the top is a new feature. It's a list of what used to be some tabs from the nav bar. You have accounting, expenses and pay bills, sales, customers, team, sales tax. These are all buttons that lead to different dashboards. for these particular features in QuickBooks. So this is kind of like a quick jump to button to get to these pages. They're going to show you this business feed on the dashboard. Right now it's showing us the setup completion. Normally it'll also show you some information about your bank and your bank transactions. Basically listing out some other tasks to be taken care of to run your business. Down here we have some action buttons if you want to use them straight from the dashboard, such as creating an invoice or recording an expense. And it looks like you could select which ones you want there first. If you want to unstar it, you'll take it off. And if you wanted to add a new one, you just star it to put it on. There's also a couple widgets down here, such as a list of your bank accounts when you add them, profit and loss bar showing your income and expenses, as well as invoices, paid and unpaid. You can also add additional widgets. Let's see what some of them look like. Some suggestions are adding just expenses or just sales. You can also add mileage if that's something you track. So let's see what that looks like when we add them. You can customize to an extent what you want to see on your dashboard. But I'll be honest with you, as a bookkeeper myself, I am rarely on the dashboard. I'm usually in one of these pages most of the time, accounting. But moving forward, there is a suggestion for you box at the bottom. Looks like a little ad for their own checking account service. Going back to the top, you'll see at the top nav bar, you'll have the name of your business. You'll have a button that takes you right back to the dashboard. There's a search bar, which comes in very handy. I'll bring it up later too. Basically, your most recent action that you took, when you click the search bar, it'll come up here. But you can also use this to search for anything in QuickBooks, and it'll do its best to find it for you. You have a contact experts button, which is, again, just a reminder that they have their own team. You could reach out and pay for their services. The tasks button is right here. Again, we saw that earlier. Right now they're wanting to have us do the setup tasks. That can be used as a reminder of things you need to do in your books. This button is integrations. You can add integrations. Let's say you're an online business and you run a lot of Shopify sales because you're in e-commerce. The quick connection to, or the quick settings to these integrations will come up here when under my integrations. One thing Intuit is really great about is that because it's so ubiquitous and such a big business, they have a lot of different partnerships and integrations. They just took over MailChimp recently so that they can keep a more seamless connection across of different business software accounts. And I think they really are trying to make their product suite your all-in-one business software management tool. Okay, from there, you have notifications. This is kind of like if anything comes up, any problems, you'll get notified. This gear bar here is settings. Definitely remember that this is a good option to click if you need to access a certain page. Things like your lists, your account settings, your chart of accounts. This is one of the quickest ways to get to it. You can access some other tools here like budgeting and the audit log to see who has done what, and access your own profile settings as well, such as subscriptions and billing. And this button here is going to be your profile to manage your own account with Intuit. And then this button on the side here, this is their AI icon. If you want to ask help or you have a question, an accounting question, you can run it through the AI bot first. before just searching on Google, for instance, and sometimes you can get a more directed answer that makes sense for QuickBooks. Okay, so going back to the dashboard, it looks like there's also a privacy button here. If you were to ever do what I'm doing and show people around QuickBooks, you can hide that financial info. There's also a customize button of the dashboard, and here it looks like you could do more of moving the widgets around, making them bigger, dependent on what kind of dashboard you want to see. And you can add and remove widgets with this button here. We'll save that as is. Okay, so now for this nav bar on the left, one of the most important buttons you're going to click in all of QuickBooks is going to be this create button. And basically you're able to do almost everything from create. You can create an invoice, you can create an expense, a bill, a check. You can create a bank deposit, a transfer, a journal entry, or add new products and services, add a new customer, add a vendor. So a lot of things I'm going to be showing you in this course, you'll easily find through the create button up here. Now, another useful button is bookmarks. A couple bookmarks I'm going to recommend adding from the start. So we'll click the pencil to add from their list. You're going to definitely want bank transactions in your books, in the bookmarks bar, chart of accounts. Depending on what style of business you run, maybe if you're sending invoices a lot and you're a service-based business, you might want to have invoices there. Same thing with contractors. If you're in construction or even real estate, you might want to keep a list of contractors on the bookmarks bar. Reconcile is another one everyone should have. And I'd say standard reports as well. So these four are definitely useful. I use them all the time in my clients' books, especially bank transactions. If you're just going to have one on there, have bank transactions. And we'll go over how to use this later. Okay, so there's another home button here. It's the same as the Intuit button up here. There's this new AI feature called Feed. I'll be honest, I haven't used it extensively, but it does seem like, from what I've seen in my clients' books, they're usually just letting you know different transfers, different things going on in the books and in the bank, whether something's not connecting properly. So in a way, the business feed can be a little bit like the to-do list or the task list up there. But like I said, I really haven't gone into it much. So moving forward, next you have reports. Apart from needing to do your bookkeeping to make the IRS happy by giving accurate numbers, it's also important to do bookkeeping so that you can have accurate numbers and have financial information about your business. And the best way to glean from all this transactional data is to run reports. We are going to definitely go over how to run reports later in this video. But for now, just know there's a handy dandy reports button right here that can bring you right to the reports page. So the button under that is My Apps. And if we go back to the dashboard, you can see all the apps up here are the My Apps here. They're the same buttons that go to the same pages. So you have accounting where you will be able to access your bank transactions, go through things like your receipts, reconcile your books, set up rules, set up the chart of accounts or access the chart of accounts, create recurring transactions, and so on. So that's accounting. Under expenses and bills, you're going to have everything related to the purchases you make in your business. So these are going to be all of your expense transactions, the vendors who you work with, a list of them. If you have a lot of 1099 contractors, this is very important to stay on top of and make sure the information is accurate. Again, we'll go over more of this in detail later on. Next, There's things like setting up bills, tracking bills, tracking mileage, contractors, 1099. So everything related to the money you spend in your business. The next app is Sales and Get Paid. This will have everything related to income and customers. So there's a dashboard page for this. You're going to see all of your open invoices. You'll be able to create new invoices or estimates. You'll be able to add products and services to QuickBooks so you can have those items on your invoices. And we'll go over how to set that up shortly. You'll also be able to list. You know what? I forgot. They separated customers from sales and get paid. So everything with customers is going to be related in the customer hub. But invoices, payment links, if you're going to receive payments through QuickBooks, you can use a link onto your own website to collect money there and have it send through QuickBooks in your own QuickBooks checking and QuickBooks payouts as well. This is going to show you all the money that transferred to you after getting paid through your links or your invoices. Really useful. Moving forward, we got the customer hub. Here you're going to have a list of all your customers, and again they're going to show open invoices, open estimates, and more data in the dashboard regarding your customers. This here is going to be your customer list. When you add your customers, you'll see them all here. You'll be able to access information about them. This is something we'll definitely set up soon. This is the payroll app. And here, if you pay for payroll, this is where you're going to see all your employees' information regarding how QuickBooks pays your taxes, your payroll taxes on your behalf. So that's all going to be in here, and that will eventually be its own video discussing how to do payroll in QuickBooks. Next is team. Here you're going to have information about employees as well as contractors. And this is where you're going to be able to record information from their W-9s so that you could send 1099s at the end of the year. After that is sales tax. I personally live in Portland, Oregon. We don't have sales tax, so this is not something I see or use often. But and most of my clients are service-based businesses or e-commerce, so I don't see this often. But this is where you would set up sales tax if you're selling physical products in a state that has sales tax. You are by law kind of like an entity who's holding the sales tax owed to the state government. So you'll definitely want to be sure you're tracking sales tax correctly because they expect you to pay them, and there are severe penalties if you do not. So moving forward, you got more information about business tax. If you don't already know, Intuit is the parent company that also owns TurboTax. So a lot of tax information, your books, everything in QuickBooks, that does transfer seamlessly into TurboTax if you end up doing your own taxes or want to use TurboTax services. So they're kind of brother sister company in that way. So you'll get some information about taxes here, coming more from your books, not necessarily by using TurboTax. And they give you a calendar here for some deadlines. You can also see things like taxable profit, and under tax summary, pretty similar information. Reminders for dates and where you stand with income and deductions. After that, they have lending, which is basically some ads for options for credit, loans with partner companies. So we're going to skip that. Afterwards, we have marketing. I think they acquired MailChimp last year. So if you want to connect your marketing back to your QuickBooks, you can now access marketing within QuickBooks, something I haven't tried before, but maybe I'll check out in the future. Here we have time, and by the way, as you can see with these diamond icons on the side, these are additional services that will need to be paid for if you want to use them. I'll just quickly go over them so you know they're here. You got time, which if you're tracking employee time, contractor time, this is one way. Do so within QuickBooks. They also have more advanced inventory management services. So if you sell physical products and you want to keep everything integrated in QuickBooks, this may be a tool you could use. All right, so we looked over the left nav bar up until My Apps. We went through all these apps. Down here you'll see Pinned. Basically, you could pin whichever apps you think you want to access the most quickly. You could pin them here. Bookmark button. You can always hit a bookmark button under any of these subcategories within the apps. For, I think it's Customize. Yes, under Customize, you can pin any additional apps that you want straight off the left nav bar. Accounting is the one I use the most, obviously, as an accountant. Yeah, with my clients who have employees, payroll is a good one to have nearby as well. All right, so we just went over a very quick but comprehensive overview of what is in QuickBooks, all the pages available to you under this Simple Start plan. All right, from here, we're going to start setting up this account. To access account settings, you hit the gear icon in the top right corner, and under your company, you click Account and Settings. And here we're going to set up company information. So you'll want to keep your company info, list that here in these boxes. And most of this was added during the setup questionnaire. There's legal information as well. This is really important if you plan on sending out 1099s. If you plan on using QuickBooks with all of its accounting features, you'll want to have your business's EIN or your social security number listed, as well as the business type and legal address. You include other customer contact info that could be added to things like the invoice. Next, after company, there's the usage settings. Here you're going to see the usage limits for your number of accounts in your chart of accounts and billable users. We know with Simple Start, you only have one user. However, this is separate from an accountant or a bookkeeper who can be invited into QuickBooks as well. That's separate. They don't need to use one of your billable user seats. And as for accounts and chart of accounts, most of the time, if you're keeping your books fairly simple, which will be the majority of you watching this, you're probably never going to come close to the 250 limit. So I wouldn't worry about that. Moving onward, next we have payment settings. To access these, you're going to want to set up payments. If you are using Invoices and perhaps a checkout link, you will definitely want to use payments so that your clients, your customers can pay you straight through the invoice, make for a much quicker process. Once that's activated, you could decide whether you want to allow for credit cards and Apple Pay, whether you want to allow for ACH bank payments in your invoices, PayPal, and Affirm. So this is a nice suite of options. And you can turn these on and off anytime. So after that, we have QuickBooks Checking. And again, this is another product they offer. If you plan on running a lot of your business's finances through QuickBooks, getting a checking account might make a lot of sense. After that, we have Sales Settings. And here you're going to have settings for your sales form content, like your preferred invoice terms. Here they're net 30. For ours, we're going to keep them to due on receipt. That means they are required to be paid as the day they're sent out. You can include things like shipping field to include shipping information into the sales form. We're going to leave that alone. We're not really going to be using any of this. Tags can be useful. We'll leave that on. So we'll just go ahead and click Save. Next, we have invoice payments. Again, you need to activate QuickBooks Payments in order to access these features. They have a new customer financing option that is currently turned on. I'm not super duper familiar with it. I'm going to guess perhaps it's an option on the invoice to finance through QuickBooks, and it's automatically turned on. We'll just leave it there for now, but you have the option to turn it off if you don't want that to be available. Under products and services, you can decide whether you want to show a product service column on sales forms, and you can decide to include, if you have physical products, an SKU column as well. These are the settings for late fees. You can decide whether there's a default charge applied to overdue invoices. Pretty nifty. And if you turn that on, you can decide whether there's a flat fee, like a $20 late invoice fee, or if you need to do a percentage of the remaining balance, as well as adding a grace period. For instance, if you were invoicing for rent, maybe you allow a 7-day grace period by the time the invoice is due. So you can set these up appropriately. And here they give you an option to name what that fee is. It could be a late fee, it could be a cancellation fee. You can basically type in anything you want. So after late fees, we got progress invoicing. This gives you the option to have partial invoices from a single estimate. So if you have a really big project and you're going to invoice maybe like an upfront payment and then a payment midway and then a completion of work payment, all those being invoices, you can do so by turning this on. Messages, this one's important if you plan on sending out a lot of invoices or sales forms. You can use their standard message, or you can, and it's suggested you create your own email message. Like, thank you, client, thank you for your service, blah, blah, blah. If you have questions, ask this help desk. This is the place to write an email that's going to be sent with the invoice. And you can change that for any of these sales forms. So for a sales receipt, a refund receipt, you can have customized messages for each one, or just use the standard message. And you can decide to send a copy to yourself. Next, we have reminders. So here you got default email message for invoice reminders. So useful. I definitely use these with my own clients. You could send a reminder basically at any customized time. Although that might be a feature only available for higher subscription plans. So we'll keep that on. If you sell digital products, you can adjust some settings here. Oh no. So this is for basically the way you send your forms, your sales receipts and whatnot, the invoice. Change it to HTML or plain text and save that there. And lastly, there's an option to turn on or off aging table at the bottom of a statement, which is the amount owed by how many days they're overdue. This isn't something I've seen with my clients, but that could be a useful feature. So that's sales, anything to do with customers, invoices. Next, we have expenses. Here you can decide whether you want, and if you want to include tags on your bills and expense purchase forms. And for this plan, we don't have access to purchase orders. Same too, no access to bill pay. So moving on to advance. Here you're going to have the accounting method, and right now it's set to accrual. So this is a little bit more of an advanced accounting topic, or this is more of a uncommon accounting topic. So for most of you, if you or your bookkeeper are just tracking your payments as they're running through the bank feed in QuickBooks, you're actually going to just be more of a cash-based business, and you're just accounting for your income when you get the money, then you'd be cash basis. However, if you're using invoices and you're recording the income when the service or product is delivered, so not when you receive the money, but when the service is delivered, that's a different timeline than the cash. So accrual is your accounting income when the invoice is sent, assuming the work is being done and performed, then that's going to be more accrual basis. However, when you're working out the bank feed, most of that is being recorded on a cash basis because it's just going to come through whenever the money was spent, not necessarily when the supply was used or the income came in for the work done. So I recommend looking more into this, getting an idea of which one your business falls into, and you need to stick with it. It's a kind of accounting method, and the IRS expects you to basically pick one and then stick with it. A lot of businesses are going to be accrual, but when you look at contractors, basically folks with a lot of money moving hands and projects that don't really get finished until after a number of months, then it might be more of a cash-based business. So advanced settings, these are going to be more of your accounting settings. Here's one for customer label. Basically, if you want to change your main name for your customers, if you're a service-based business, it might be clients. If you're a real estate investor, then and you're sending invoices out to your tenants, then you might want to make it tenants. For the Maple Street Rentals, we'll just save it as tenants. You can select your marketing preferences here. Again, with accounting, the first month of the fiscal year, for most of us, it's going to be January, unless you elected through the IRS to have a different calendar year. So same thing, first month of tax year is going to be the same as the fiscal year. And again, we have a selection for the accounting method. And then down here is an option of whether you want to turn on the process of closing the books. This would be done on an annual date usually. That means after a certain point of time, once the books are closed, you cannot change any of the data from prior to that time. It's a very specific accounting process. For most of you, I would just leave this off unless you're working with an accountant who performs that task. So we'll save these as is. Next, we have chart of accounts. Here you can have the option to enable account numbers, which can be really helpful if you have a ton of accounts. A lot of accountants do like to use a number system. For now, just to keep things simple, we're going to keep this off. You can also have an account that you'd have to add or select within here to add tips. Next, we got automation. You can choose whether you want to pre-fill forms with previously entered content. So basically, if you sent an invoice to a specific customer with a certain item and price, the next time you create an invoice for that same customer, it's going to try to populate that same item and price again. This could be useful if you're sending the same thing over and over. Like, for instance, if monthly rent with an invoice and we're manually creating invoices, that could be a pretty useful feature. Same thing with automatically applied credits. That means if, let's say you owe through a return or a credit to a client's account, something happened and a tenant was given a credit so that they only had to pay half of their next month's rent. If a credit is added to the account and then the invoice automatically goes out the next month, that credit would automatically be applied because it's sitting on the account. And the same thing for bill payments, it's just with expense and bill payments instead. Moving forward, we got your home currency, whether you want to be part of the business network. Basically, when you enter vendors into your QuickBooks, if you type in their name or the business name, it's going to try to auto-populate the rest of the information like the address and all these things if that business or person is part of the business network. I don't really use this much with my clients or at all. This is something I wouldn't want to accidentally mess up if I didn't really know what the right information was and just took the first thing. But it's up to you whether you want to be included in that network as well. It could make for quicker invoicing and bill pay. Some other preferences, you could change the date format, the currency form, Again, we see the customer label. There's a warning setting to let you know if a duplicate check number is being used. Same thing for bill numbers, as well as journal entry numbers, which we'll just leave these settings as is. And then if you're inactive for a certain amount of time, you can just get automatically signed out after 1, 2, or 3 hours. Okay, so it looks like we're done with settings. So we're done there. All right, from here, we're going to start to dive into the world of Maple Street Rentals. So the first thing we're going to do is set up the chart of accounts. To get to the chart of accounts, you can either come up to the gear icon and select chart of accounts under your company, or you can come to your bookmarks, because I told you to bookmark this, select chart of accounts from here, or under accounting, you can go to chart of accounts from the app here. Okay, so here we are in the chart of accounts. And QuickBooks will automatically populate the chart of accounts with a lot of basic accounts, but also certain accounts that you cannot delete because they are being mapped to certain functions in the software. So for instance, you have an account called accounts receivable. This is going to be a total of all of your open invoices, basically money owed to you by customers or clients or tenants that haven't been paid yet. And they're a kind of asset. They'll show up on the balance sheet. This is going to be tied to your invoices. The software in the back end is being mapped to the invoice system in QuickBooks. So that's an example of why if you try to inactivate all of the chart of accounts and upload your own, you're going to run into an error with QuickBooks telling you that you can't inactivate certain accounts, and accounts receivable is one of those accounts. So before I go in too deep, let me begin by saying the chart of accounts is kind of like the backbone of the accounting system. So each of these is like a bucket, and the bucket is saying, in my bucket, here's all these transactions that relate to a specific feature in the business's finances. And the chart of accounts is highly dependent on something known as the accounting equation. So QuickBooks, Wave, all the software you see online that's built for accounting is all dependent on something known as double entry accounting. And that means that with any transaction, there's always going to be at least two accounts affected. And you're going to be asking yourself, what does that mean? So double entry accounting is dependent on a certain equation called the accounting equation. And that equation means assets equals liabilities plus equity. You probably know what an asset is. It's like cash in the bank. It's the house that the business owns or you own. Assets are everything the business owns. And this can also include things like accounts receivable, money that's owed to the business, or inventory. And on the other side of the accounting equation, you have liabilities and equity. Liabilities is pretty easy to understand too. These are all the people who you owe money to. It could be the loan from the bank. It could be a balance on a credit card. It could be money you owe to your vendors for services that you've used but you haven't paid for yet. And the last section, this one's a little harder for folks to understand, is equity, because it's a term that gets thrown around a lot in finance. But in this case, equity is basically all the money that belongs to the owner. It could be from money that the owner put into the business, the investment to start the business. It could also be all the retained earnings, all the income after paying for expenses. All that income is profit to the owner. That's equity. So when you take all of your assets and you subtract all of the liabilities, that leaves you with all the equity left over. So this equation always has to stay in balance. And an example of that is Maple Street Rentals owns a multifamily home. And let's say that home costs $300,000. So the value of it is $300,000. And it's owned by the business. So under assets, you have a $300,000 home. So, however, let's say that the owner invested $100,000 into a down payment and took the rest out, the $200,000 left over, as a loan from a bank. Now we can see that even though the business owns $300,000 of this property, $200,000 of it is a liability that needs to be paid to the bank, plus $100,000 that was contributed by the owner. So another way of saying assets equals liabilities plus equity is that what we have equals who owns it. So I know that was a lot to take in, and trust me, you don't have to understand this right now. If you do want to go more deeply into this type of accounting education, I did make a pretty decent webinar recently explaining all of this and how it relates to bookkeeping. You can watch that here. But for now, what I want you to understand and take away from this is that you can't just label and categorize your transactions willy-nilly in QuickBooks. Every transaction is going to be affecting two accounts. So in that example, we have an asset account that was affected by the purchase of that house. We also have an equity account that was affected as well. Both increased. Same thing with the liability account. So you have to be very careful with how you categorize all of your transactions. Most will make sense, but every now and then some require a little extra work, and that's where you'll create journal entries. But the problem is you don't know what you don't know. So I do encourage you, if you are trying to do your books yourself, that's fine when you're small. At some point, as your business grows and it becomes more complex, I highly, highly encourage you to get a bookkeeper, an accountant to be doing your books for you. And it just so happens I am one as well. So I would be happy to do your books for you if you want to make sure they're done accurately. And until then, I'm going to do my best to educate you so that you can help yourself without creating more problems. Okay, so done with my spiel. So all of those accounts that fall under assets, liabilities, equity, you're going to find them all here on the chart of accounts. And just think of each one as like a bucket. They're not necessarily physical accounts. Like there's no physical account for like you don't have a bank account that's just office equipment. It's just a category that we're labeling all of our transactions and saying they relate to this. However, there are other accounts in the chart of accounts, such as your bank account, your credit card, which are physical accounts. And those need to be tracked separately from one another. So if for every bank account you have, you're going to need a separate account for it in the chart of accounts. So in QuickBooks, you'll have your list of accounts, and you'll notice this green button here. It's not a button. It's just a green label. This means it says BAL. That stands for balance sheet. It just means these accounts are going to be found on your balance sheet. And if you go down, you'll see one for profit and loss. These accounts are only going to show up on your profit and loss statement. And we'll go over what those reports are later on. If you want to add accounts to your chart of accounts, you'll come up here and select New Account, and you'll give it an account name. You'll also have to give it an account type, and this is important because it's going to tell you whether this account shows up on the balance sheet or the profit and loss statement. And it does matter for tax time for your accountant or your CPA to know exactly how to categorize your income or expense in the tax forms and whether it's deductible or not. You can also make sub-accounts. So for example, let's say in this rental property service, they own that multifamily house that I mentioned earlier. And because in real estate, property can be a form of an asset, if it's intended on being sold in the future, it can be treated as inventory, especially with flips. Let's say we're going to create an account, and this isn't necessarily how I would do it with my real estate investing companies. I just want to show you how to use QuickBooks, so don't copy what I do here for your real estate property. I really just want to show you all the different features in as simple of an example as I possibly could give. So let's say we're going to add a new account to track specifically one property from another because we want to see the values listed separately on the balance sheet. We'll say that property is 1234 Maple Street. The account type is going to be an asset, and we're going to say it's an other asset, and the detail type is going to be a other long-term asset. They plan on owning this property for a long time. And you could add in an opening balance. For this, we're just going to leave it as is and add the transaction, the journal entry for it later on. And we'll hit save. And now you can see down here that Maple Street has been added as an account to the chart of accounts. Now, remember I said this asset is worth $300,000, but the balance here says 0. So remember, this is just a bucket. This is just saying like, hey, this is the category for this asset. We'll add in the actual transaction later on to record the purchase of that property. So in the chart of accounts, you're going to see a lot of different account types. You will see assets, the things that are usually property, plant, equipment that's owned by the business. It can also be your accounts receivable, money in the bank. You'll also see liabilities like sales tax payable, that sales tax that you're holding on from sold items that you owe to the state government. And this is where liabilities, you'll include your credit cards for the business. You're going to see equity accounts as well, such as owner's draw and investments. This one's really important whenever you, as an owner of your business, put money into the business or take money out to pay yourself, especially as an LLC. These are the accounts that are going to track that. And then you'll see some income accounts. This is how you're going to track sales and services in QuickBooks, and I'll show you how you're going to connect that to your products and services later. You also want to track cost of goods sold, which is a little different from expenses. These are the costs that go into creating your product. So they're tracked separately from expenses, which might just be general business expenses like advertising and labor, employee salaries, and wages. So these are the expenses. And there's a lot of different expense accounts. Usually this is most of what businesses are tracking, expenses and income. So now it's your turn. Let's say Maple Street Rentals has a bank account and a credit card account. The first is Scrooge Duck Vault Bank, and it's a checking account. And the second is Chase Bank. It's a credit account for a credit card. How would you add these two accounts to the chart of accounts? What account type are they? What's their detail type? Take a moment and think about this. All right, and when you're ready, the answer is that to first add the checking account from Scrooge Duck Bank, Scrooge Duck Vault Bank, we'll include the account name. We'll include the account type, which is a bank. And the detail type is going to be checking. And we're not going to add any other information yet, and we'll just save it as is. Note that we have not connected the account yet or included any transactions, so this is just an empty bucket for now. And then for the credit card, again, we'll do new account. We'll include Chase Bank. The account type is going to be a liability. It is a credit card, and the detail type is credit card. And again, just a bucket for now. The accounts are not linked yet. So now in the chart of accounts, we see Scrooge Duck Vault. It's a bank account. It's an asset. It's going to be on the balance sheet. And then down here we have Chase Bank credit card, also going to show up as a liability on the balance sheet. So once you're in the chart of accounts, a couple other features we'll go over quickly before we move on. If you want to change a couple things, like a handful of accounts at a time, let's say you want to get rid of a bunch of the chart of accounts and replace it with something else you're going to upload, you'll select all the accounts and then hit batch actions, and you can make them all inactive. You can't necessarily delete them, but they basically get hidden. And then here you can search for any of the accounts in here. You can also shorten the list by just balance sheet accounts or just profit and loss accounts, or the ones that we created. And there's other editing tools over here, such as going through and editing all the names. And then under settings, you can decide which columns come up. You can decide whether you want to include inactive accounts on this list, and you can decide how long you want the list to be. One other thing to note with chart of accounts, each individual account, you can see all the transactions related to it by clicking View Register, and under there, you're going to see a list of all the transactions that come through that account. And the chevron on the right is basically an action tab. Here's an option to connect this bank account, to edit the account, make it inactive, or run a report. So that's pretty nifty. All right, you're doing great. I applaud you for learning and sticking around. Next, we're going to move forward and set up a couple more things for Maple Street Rentals. So the first thing we're going to do is set up invoices. So again, we can go to Create Invoice, go to My Apps, and go to Sales and Get Paid and click Invoices. Since this is the first invoice, we're shown this setup page here. So we're going to click Create Invoice. And on this page, we're going to be able to start creating templates. So you can go on a tour, but we're just going to dive right in. And here there's going to be an option to edit default settings. So here under sales, you're going to see the invoice options that we went over earlier. This has more, those options in the settings have more to do with the accounting aspect of it. We'll go back to invoices. So we'll go to create invoice. And you'll be able to see, you could do some fun things with their AI, like bringing in an image. For instance, we're going to add a logo, and I got one right here. Let's see if I could drag it in. Cool, so we got a logo for the invoice. On an invoice, you're going to see information regarding your company. Here, you'll be able to add a tenant. We'll go over this when we create our first invoice, but I just want to show you some of the settings. You'll want to click Manage. And okay, all right. So let's set up invoices, and there's not a quick way to do this. You kind of have to go around. You'll go to Create an Invoice. And under Manage, we're going to customize to create a default. So we'll add in the logo. Here is where we could include whether we want to have information like an invoice number. We'll show that because we'll track it internally. An invoice date, a due date, and what the terms are. You can also play with payment options here. We're a little bit more interested in design. Here we have a modern template. If we remove the default, we could change it to standard or add other templates. We'll leave it on modern. Here you can change the color of the accent. So this part here, you can change it to something that relates to your logo, or make it printer friendly and have the whole thing be black and white. You could change the font. And then you got scheduling options as well, such as reminders. We want to have a reminder on due date and after due date. We could also choose to make an invoice recurring. And other things you could do on an invoice, you'll be able to add products and services, how much they go for, the quantity, the total, sales tax. If you want to set that up and have that automatically calculated for you, you could do so. And then you can include messages for your customers, such as how to pay, notes, maybe a thank you, or like what to do if there's any problems, who to call. And you can add attachments as well. And here you can print or download or make recurring and see if it maintains that template. We're just going to leave without saving. All right, so that's invoice customization and setup. Just to speed up the process, if you use estimates, it's pretty much the same as creating an invoice. You get the same kind of customization features and design, and it'll look pretty similar to the invoice. And estimates are cool because they're sent to the client, and if the client accepts it, it can automatically be turned into an invoice and get you paid faster. All right, so let's start adding some customers and get this business going. To add a customer, you can either come up and go to create and select create add a tenant, because we changed the name, or you can go to the customer hub in here, and here you can import customers. We're just going to add it manually. So for our first customer, or tenant rather, we have Grace, good neighbor. With customers, you can add in their names. You can add in their name, their company, choose how the name is displayed, whether it's the company or the person. Include their email, which I highly recommend if you intend on sending invoices, their phone number, other information like a website, and address as well for billing. And you can include notes and attachments here. Again, that's some of that CRM feature of QuickBooks. And you can include information about their payment setting as well, what their primary payment method is, what their usual terms are, and if there's a running opening balance. And you can add a custom field if you want to basically have more information to report. For instance, we could say if we were tracking tenants in certain properties, maybe we'll make a custom field to track which property to which tenant. All right, so go ahead and press save. And now you'll see under tenants or customers, your first tenant. And right now we just have one, and 0 is the amount of open invoices for them. And in this section, you'll be able to see their individual information. You'll be able to see later on tenant transactions, the activity feed, whether you have recurring transactions set up, such as invoices, tracking the late fees if that's a feature you're using, and apparently you can create tasks related to them as well. Okay, so we have our first customer. Now it's your turn. There's another tenant, and I swear this is his real name. We got Frank Fix It Wrong, and you're going to find out later why he's named Fix It Wrong. How would you add this tenant to Maple Street's customer list? So kind of like last time, you could either come into the customer hub and add a tenant this way, but more quickly you can go to create and go down to add tenant, or maybe on your books it'll say add customer, and then you add their name and their last name. And for now, we'll just save that information as is. So under our tenants list, we now have 2 tenants, and they both don't have any due invoices. And if your list ever gets really long and you're looking for someone, you can always use the search bar here or use the search bar up here to find them. So now we have our tenants. Let's add in our vendors. So to add vendors, we're going to want to get out of the customer hub and get into expenses and bills. And one way we can add vendors is by going to the vendors tab and adding a vendor here manually or importing them. You can also go to create under vendors, add vendor at the bottom, which will bring us to the same page. So for our first vendor, we're going to add in the property management company named Keys and Knees Property Management. And that's going to be their company name as well. We'll just give them a fake email address and save it as is. However, let's go back and edit this vendor. I want to note that with vendors, you're going to see slightly different information to include from customers. You might see information regarding bill pay and their ACH info, but what's most important, especially with your 1099 contractors, you're going to want to go down to additional info. You're going to want to include information from a W-9 that you should have submitted to them to fill out when you agreed to do business. You're going to get either the business ID number or social security number. And then whether or not you actually have to send a 1099, I highly recommend just automatically selecting track payments for 1099 so that you can get accurate information at the end of the year. And if you want more information about who counts as a 1099 contractor, I did a little video about that here. So you can include information about their payment terms as well. And another important thing you could do is when they get paid, you can include a certain accounting default expense category for them. For instance, if they are strictly a contractor, laborer, then you can just automatically have their expenses mapped to contract labor. So we'll hit save. And under vendors, you'll see now we have our first vendor. This is our vendor list. All the transactions for vendors are going to come through here. You can see it for individual vendors. So now it's your turn. You're going to add in another vendor. This time it's going to be one of the repair companies that Maple Street Rentals likes to use frequently. Their name is the Cupboard Comeback. So how would you add the Cupboard Comeback? It's a tongue twister to Maple Street Rentals QuickBooks account. I'll give you a second to think about it. But yeah, basically what we just did. Either coming to the vendors page, you can add a new vendor here, or come to create, down to add vendor. And here we'll add the cupboard comeback. And like before, want to include as much information as you have from their W-9. Be sure to track payments for 1099. And we'll click Save. So now when we go to vendors, you'll see we have a list, and there's no overdue bills, no open bills, no information yet about how much we've paid to vendors. All right, so now that we have some customers and vendors, let's add in some products and services. So like most things in QuickBooks, to add a product or service that your business sells or pays for through vendors, a product and service under Other. And here we're adding a new service. You know what? Let's start with this page here. So under Sales and Get Paid is also where you'll find the products and services that your business sells. We'll add to create items, and here they're automatically having us create a service. You are able to create products as well. I think because we set this as a rental, as a real estate company, it's just automatically sending us towards service. So the first one is going to be monthly rent, and it's a service, a type of service. So the most important thing you're going to want to include in your products and services is a name, but also which income account on the chart of accounts you want to map the sales to. So for a generic example, we're just going to map it to services. But if you wanted to break up your income accounts into something more individual, if you have a number of different services you offer, each one should probably get its own account if you want to be able to track, the revenue from each of those separately. However, if you want a very quick tax time, you could just include all of your income into either sales or services, and that'd be fine too, because you can run reports on your products and services as well. So we're going to include that. There is an option, which we're going to go over later, to include the same service as a purchase from a vendor. The way this makes more sense is to think of it as an actual item. So let's say you as a business sold, sold like some trash cans for the company. Specific like kitchen trash cans to tenants that work really well with the unit. I'm not a real estate broker. Don't ask me to do that. And you purchase those trash cans from another vendor, then you'd want to click this button so that you could both buy and then sell the product and track the overall profit from that. But for now, we're going to leave this just as its own service. You got the name, the service, and we'll hit save and close. And now we see a list of our products and services, the first one there being monthly rent. So now we have an option. If we add more products and services, we can click this button here and see that there's a couple other types of products and services QuickBooks allows us to track. And that can include a non-inventory item. So let's say we just, so this could be maybe like a digital course or something that this rental company sells in addition to taking rent. We could include an inventory item, but again, that's part of a more expensive subscription package. Basically, for this business, most of its products are going to be services. So we're going to add one more service that's related to this rental service, and that's going to be repair costs. And this is a service that is going to be invoiced to clients who maybe incurred some kind of repair expense that they have to pay back. And it's going to be something, remember, we're going to include it as a purchase from a vendor because we're going to because this rental company is going to have to hire a repair service to perform the repair. We're going to leave the purchase cost empty since it's a variable rate dependent on what kind of repair is needed. But importantly, we need an expense account to track this too. So there's two kinds of repairs and maintenance accounts here. If you are a real estate investor, you need to separately track repairs and maintenance that relate to your properties versus repairs and maintenance that relate to your business, to where your business runs its business. So like that would be the general expense. You'll want each separate property to be tracking its own repairs and maintenance. For that, we're going to need a new account. We're going to call it property repairs and maintenance. And it's kind of expense account, although technically it's more of a cost of goods sold if this were more of a flip. But real estate accounting is its own complex niche. I'm not teaching you that here. This is not what I would do with my own real estate investing clients. This is just to show you how QuickBooks can be used with how it can be used. So we'll just leave this as is. The detail type, we're going to call it an other business expense. We're going to hit save and close. Hit save and close again. And now we see repair costs on here as well. Okay, so those were products and services related to sales and get paid. So because of that feature, if you wanted to track products and services that your business buys from vendors or pays for through vendors, you can add that to this list as well and make it one list, but just use that feature to track it as something that is bought by your business. So now that we have customers, tenants, and a service, let's send our first invoice. So as we saw earlier, you can either access invoices through sales and get paid, or you can come up to create and select invoice. And when you're creating an invoice, there's a lot of different little options you can use. The most important, I'm not going to go over everything. The most important we want to focus on is that with every invoice, you need someone who you're going to send the invoice to. And for this example, we're going to send the first of the month rent to Grace. So you'll want to make sure there's an email associated. You can include an invoice number. For terms, this is due on receipt. The invoice date for this example is going to be January 1st. And the due date is also going to be January 1st of 2026. Now that we have the customer set up, we go down to product or service. And here we are going to add the service of monthly rent. And this is going to be a straight rate of $2,000 per month. And the amount will populate. So if we wanted to add more products or services to this, we would just include it on the next line or include it with this button here. We don't need to add sales tax. So once you have the customer and the product or service, you can save and come back to it. But more likely you're going to review and send. And when you hit that button, you're going to see an example of what the message is going to look like. So on the right, we have a layout of what the client is, or in this case, the tenant is going to see. And because we don't have payments set up, normally if you do, you would see buttons and options to pay with a credit card or whichever feature you wanted to include. But you can adjust this message here to anything you like. And as long as that looks good, you could hit send invoice or send and create a new one. For now, we'll just hit send invoice. Since there isn't a real email associated with it, we are going to go back and just hit save, which manually adds the invoice to QuickBooks. So now we see under Invoices in this dashboard, we have an open unpaid invoice for Grace Goodneighbor. And then because I'm doing this in February, it says it's overdue for 44 days. We're going to go over how to record that payment later on. We're going to do it through the bank feed, since that's how most of you are going to be receiving your income. But if you were to manually create it, get income, like if someone gave you cash for their invoice, you can always come here and select receive payment. You can also view or edit the invoice here as well. And another action, and there's lots of other actions where you could send a reminder, create a task with it. You could print the invoice, view activity associated with the invoice, and all these other options such as void or delete. And you can see the AI created a reminder for the invoice. So now it's your turn. Let's say that Maple Street Rentals is sending out another invoice for the first month rent to our other tenant, Frank Fix-It-Wrong. How would you set up and send an invoice to the tenant in QuickBooks? I'll give you a second to think about it. You could pause this if you like. All right, so we know there's always a number of roads that lead to Rome. You can either come into the invoice section here and create invoice, or come up here and create new invoice. And as we just did, we'll add the tenant. We got Frankie Fix-It-Wrong. The invoice is its new number. The terms are due on receipt. The invoice date. See, it's that auto populate that we set up in settings. It's trying to give us what we think, basically information from the most recent invoice. It's the same invoice date, the first of the month, like Grace. And we'll include the product service as monthly rent. And this time it's a rate of $1,500. And this will auto-populate dependent on where you enter information. We don't need sales tax. We'll save this. We can review it first, make sure it looks good. Looks exactly how we want to send it. We'll go back and hit save. Okay, now we have two open invoices. And you can see here the total increase for the number of overdue invoices. So if you're sending a lot of invoices, this is a good dashboard to check in with. Okay. So now we need to do one of the most important things in all of QuickBooks. It's going to be how you're going to be able to best maintain your books in general. And that's connecting your bank accounts to the bank feed. So we'll go back to home for a second. From there, we'll go to accounting, and you're going to go to bank transactions. And here they're automatically going to want you to connect your bank account so that it automatically connects and flows through. That will be the general way you add your account, and you can import all of your transactions from your bank from a specific period, a specific date. Most banks will connect, sometimes they don't. I'm going to show you how to manually add transactions in the event that you can't automatically import your bank account. So we'll click Upload Transactions. Now you're going to want to select an account that these transactions are going to be added to. So remember, in the chart of accounts, we made a bank account for the Scrooge Duck Vault Bank. If you forgot to do that, or this is a new account, you could just add the new account here. But since we already set it up, we'll hit Scrooge Duck Vault. And then we're going to drag in a PDF. We're going to drag in a PDF file of the bank statement, something that you can find from your bank in your usually your online account through the bank. All right, so I got a PDF here of a mock bank statement. So this is just for educational purposes only. And it looks like it's extracting data. All right, so we're seeing a warning that the document may not be processed correctly and the data may be inaccurate because we're pulling this up as a PDF. It's going to do its best, and it's showing us the PDF of mapping what it sees here into columns here. So we want to see a date. We want to make sure the date's right, the description's right, and the type is right. So if it's a checking account and money is leaving the bank, that means the account is going to be debited. And if it's coming into the bank account, it's going to be credited. Those terms sound switched, but it is going to import correctly. I'll be honest, doing it, importing by a PDF is kind of risky. I highly recommend importing by a CSV file instead. So let me show you what that looks like. There is a very handy way you can convert the file. I don't know if you've heard of this cool little software thing, but ChatGPT can pretty much do anything. And when you go into ChatGPT, if you're on one of their pro plans, which I recommend, it's a great service, if just for thinking with a partner, you can add files. So what you want to do is include this prompt, convert this PDF into a CSV file, and you add in or drag in the bank statement. You can upload that. And you'll see that it converted the PDF statement into a CSV file. Let's make sure it did it correctly. So here's the CSV file. We see the date, descriptions, deposits, withdrawals, and a balance. So let's import this into QuickBooks. Go upload from file. All right, so we have Scrooge Duck Vault. We're going to drag in the CSV file. And you can see that was a quicker upload. And this time it's a slightly different list of settings. So it's asking, is the first row in your file a header? We're going to say yes. How many columns show amounts? There were 2 columns. What's the date format used in your file? And then now we have to map the correct information. So here's the QuickBooks field. It's going to pull the date from that first column, which is date. It's going to pull the description from that second column, description. It's going to pull the amount for money received. It's going to pull from deposits. And for money spent, it's going to pull from withdrawals. And if we want to include a check number column in there, we could, but I didn't. So we'll continue. And now we see the amounts. The deposits are positive. The expenses are negative. And now we select which transactions to import. We're going to select them all and continue. It's giving us a warning. We're importing 6 transactions. Yes, that is correct. All right, import complete. Let's see what we got. Cool. So it looks like it imported accurately. And you can already tell we got things to do here. So once you add in a bank, under bank transactions, you're going to see all of your bank accounts listed here. And all of those transactions for each bank will be separated by these boxes, and the transactions related to that account will be listed below. So this is the page you're going to spend most of your time in with QuickBooks. This is the actual bookkeeping part where you're going to go through line by line, just going through your transactions and either matching them to a transaction already recorded in the books, or categorizing them to their appropriate account in the chart of accounts. Now, before we dive into this, let's go through adding a credit card account. So same thing, we're going to come up here, link account. It would be if you link another automatically imported account. Instead, we got to upload from a file. And this time, instead, we're going to have our credit card account, Chase Bank, be the account to upload these transactions for. And I'm going to drop in the CSV file for that. So just to show you, here's the Chase Bank mock credit card statement. You'll see there's account name, statement period. Here's a list of transactions. We're going to make sure these are imported into QuickBooks. So here we're getting a warning that it might not have been entered correctly. So let's help QuickBooks map these correctly. So we have a date column with those dates and they look accurate. We have a description column pulling from descriptions here, which looks accurate. And this is the part that it always sounds so funky, whether it's debited or credited. So I'm going to trust that it understands that this is a liability account. With liability accounts, usually credits increase them and debits decrease them. They're the opposite of asset accounts, but don't worry about that. That's just double entry accounting logic. I think this is accurate. So let's go ahead and import. Let's add the transactions and then we can import all 4 of them. Okay, here we now see Chase Bank transactions and it looks like they were added correctly. Okay, cool. So you'll notice that we had these transactions in the bank. You've seen on the bank statement that there are balances. It's $2,000 in the Scrooge Duck Vault. There's a balance of $110 in Chase Bank. And yet, up here we see that they're both 0. Why is that? So it's important to know, as long as these transactions are pending, they're not in the books yet. Once we post the transaction and we say that it looks great, it's accepted, then once those are posted, they get added to the account. So let's, we're going to do the date column from earliest to latest. Let's go into Scrooge Duck Vault and let's add in our first transactions. So this is kind of like a month of bookkeeping. So here we have a rent deposit. That was a $2,000 from Grace's rent. QuickBooks automatically tried to match to the open invoice. And here we are reviewing it and it looks great. So we're going to hit match. And if we refresh the page, we can see now that $2,000 has been posted to this account. So going down the line here, working out of the bank feed, here we're going to match the other rent deposit from Frankie's rent. That's correct. And now if we go back over to, our overview of our tenants, going to tenants, you can see now we have no more open invoices. All of them have been paid. And if we look at the individual, you can see under their transaction list, you could see that the date the invoice was created and the date that the payment was received, and what the status of the invoice is. So that's one way to kind of keep track of invoices, and you'll see how everything in QuickBooks is connected. So now we'll go through more of these transactions. Next, we have a software expense. You can click on the transaction, and you can change the transaction type. You could change which account it's being categorized into, or who was paid, the vendor. You can also split your expenses or your income if it's going to be, for instance, if you deposit a bunch of checks to the bank and it comes in as one big deposit, you could split that up into any paid invoices or income that needs to be tracked separately. You can also tap these from to bars here, and you can add a customer, a vendor that way. You can also start just typing in and pulling up a category. So for instance, we obviously have a software expense. We don't have an account for that. So you can add an account right out of the transactions list. Again, this is a cool functionality of bookkeeping software. You could make changes in anywhere in this software, so you don't have to interrupt your workflow. And we're going to include software as an expense account. The account type is going to be an expense, and the detail type, let's see. Usually there's one for computer software. In this case, we're just going to say, we're just going to call it dues and subscriptions for now. We'll save and close. So now we have this software category, and you see this, the Intuit AI icon here. This is going to let you know that in future transactions, it's going to try to match your transactions to whatever they think is most likely to be the right account, depending on how you match your previous ones. So it's kind of learning your books as it goes. Let me tell you right now, as a bookkeeper, it is not always right, because even if it gets the category right, like let's say, yeah, that was software and it was an expense. Maybe it was software for your personal life. So for the business owner, they accidentally paid Netflix through the business. That would actually be an owner's withdrawal from the business. It was money taken out of the business to pay for the owner's own personal expense. QuickBooks doesn't know that. There needs to be some level of communication, or you as an owner need to go into your QuickBooks and make that change. So it's easy to want to just kind of fall asleep while you're posting these here and let AI features take care of it, but you really do need to scan over your transactions one by one and make sure they're accurate. All right, so this one, software looks good. We're going to go ahead and post it. Next, we have an advertising expense. It's being suggested here by AI to use it as advertising and marketing. We'll go ahead and post that. You can also select multiple transactions and edit them in bulk, such as changing what kind of transaction type they are, or a vendor or customer, or all matching them to a specific account. But we'll see again, because both of these banks are added here, QuickBooks is noticing these transactions that relate to each other. They need to be paired because it's going to be treated as a transfer. This isn't money received as income. This is a payment from one account to another. So you got to make sure your transactions are matched correctly so that you're not overstating income or, creating other fictional kind of financial data. So we know this is a pair. We'll go ahead and post it, and you'll see that transaction is no longer on the other bank account. And next we have the property management fee. For this one, we'll want to include the vendor, such as the keys in these property management. And for this category, building and land and rent aren't correct. We're going to call this, it's either a kind of contract labor. It's more like, honestly, it's more of a due and fee. But for simplicity's sake, right now, I just want to continue with the tutorial. We'll just put in as contract labor. And we'll hit post. Okay, now that all these transactions have been taken care of, you'll get this nice green check mark. And if you wanted to go back and edit those, you'll just go into posted to see what's been added to the books. And you can make little changes here, such as the vendor or customer and the matched category. You can always undo a transaction as well. If, for instance, I find if you're trying to pair a transfer, sometimes you need to just undo one to be able to fix the other. So just keep an eye out for what you're doing. All right, now we got the Chase Bank account as well. Okay, so now we're back in Chase Bank. There's a transaction here. The next one is a repair. So I want to pause for a second and let's pretend, just to show you this example, because I forgot to do it earlier, let's create a invoice for Frankie Fix It Wrong, because his name is Frankie Fix It Wrong, and it just so happens that he broke his cabinets and tried to fix them himself, and it just didn't go right. So we're going to invoice Frankie. Let's see what date that transaction was. It was on the 15th. So we're going to invoice Frankie for that expense. And we included it both as a service we buy and one we sell. And the amount is $200. And this was on the 15th. And so we're going to save that. And we're going to pretend like Frankie didn't pay it. And it's just open. If we go back to our tenants, you'll see there's an open balance of $200. Now, the other end of that transaction we got to record. We ended up having to pay a contractor to perform that work, to perform the repair. So we'll create an expense here. And the pay was the cupboard comeback. That was on the 15th. We'll say the payment method was a check. And it came out of, whoops, we had it in the wrong account. It was in the Chase Bank. All right, so let's save and close that. Now we go to transactions. Okay, so now we're matching the repair expense. So we're going to match that here. All right, so let's go through the rest of these transactions. We got software subscription. This one will change to that software account, expense account, and we'll post it. And then we got this one. The description didn't come up here, but it did come up in the memo. This was a business phone monthly fee. We'll add that to, we can either add it to utilities or create, we'll create a new account for, and the account type is going to be an expense. And we'll treat it as a type of utilities. And close that. And post. All right, so let's explore a little bit why the bank is coming up at 0. So the best way to kind of get into what's going on the bank end of your accounts is to go to chart of accounts, and you'll want to go into view register. Now, part of the reason that it is possibly that the bank says 0 because either one, it's not automatically connected, so QuickBooks has no idea how much money is actually in the bank. If your banks were connected automatically, they were linked, then the bank balance could show up. First, I do want to show you, if you're ever wondering what actually is going on in the bank end of things, make sure you view register. And this will be a list of all the transactions coming through your bank. And we upload this through the paper statement. The one thing I'm not seeing here is an opening balance. Okay, so let's just quickly go over the bank register. Usually if you have questions about your transactions, the bank register is a great place to get some answers. So you'll see here, you get the date, the reference type, like how it was entered. We have like expense, or something was a credit card payment that was connected in the bank feed. You'll see the other side of the transaction, so the other account affected. For instance, when we had this expense for the property management fee, contract labor, that expense account went up. And same thing when we got a payment from the tenants, accounts receivable was credited, so it went down. You'll see the payment section. You'll see whether it's a payment, a deposit, and most importantly, you'll see this feature here. This icon lets you know that it was manually added from the bank feed that we've been working out of. And C means it was cleared, so we know it cleared the bank. You'll see another option here is R. That means the transaction was reconciled. We'll go over that soon once we go into reconciliation. Or it's going to be blank if it's neither cleared nor reconciled. But in this case, we have this transaction reconciled. And lastly, you'll see how the balance changes in the bank account as things are added and subtracted. So let's dive into bank reconciliation. And bank reconciliation is one of those tasks with bookkeeping that I usually see all my clients who were doing their books, no one ever does it. And usually it's because it seems like it's daunting, it might be complicated, they don't want to mess it up. I'm here to tell you it's actually a really simple process, and I'm going to show you how to do it in QuickBooks. So let's go to my apps and accounting, and we'll go to Reconcile, and we'll get started. And they'll give you some instructions, or saying that you basically are pulling out your bank statement. You're looking at your bank statement, and you're looking at what's in QuickBooks, and then as long as those all match, then the account's reconciled. It's like looking at your homework and the answer sheet. You're just double checking, and this is one of the few ways, because as you can see, there are so many ways you can make mistakes with bookkeeping. Things get entered twice, you forget what something was, you miscategorize it, or you make a duplicate invoice. This is one of the safety breaks to help us slow down a bit and make sure the information we have in QuickBooks is accurate. You're mostly going to be reconciling accounts that are physical, so like the actual bank accounts. You could also reconcile things like payroll. You don't have to do this for every account. It's mostly just the physical banks that you should definitely be doing in case there was any issues in the bank itself, or with transferring the automatic feed transactions. So to do a reconciliation, the first thing you're going to do is decide which account you're reconciling. We'll start with Scrooge Duck Vault Bank. We'll have the bank statement ready and nearby. If you're automatically importing your transactions through QuickBooks, there is a cool feature. You can sign up to have your statements pulled automatically into QuickBooks, so you don't have to actually go into the bank statements on your bank website and download them. It only works for some accounts, not all, so it's great when you can have it. Otherwise, usually you're going to have to download your bank statements first, or send them to your bookkeeper first, before you can do a reconciliation. So you'll pull up the bank, you'll pull up the bank statement, and what QuickBooks wants to know is the beginning balance they'll have on already tracked, but they'll need to know the statement ending balance and the statement ending date. And side note, this is something you should be doing on a monthly basis. Basically, whenever you get a new statement from the bank, that's the time to do a reconciliation. So, for example, with my clients, I do them monthly. I'll ask my clients the first week of the month for all their statements that I can't just get in QuickBooks. Once they give them to me, I can do the reconciliation for them, and then from there, give reports that are accurate. So the statement ending balance here at the end of the statement says $2,000, so we're going to add that here. And then the statement ending date up here, statement period ended January 31st, 2026, so we'll add that here. And we'll hit start reconciling. So we did import the statement, so it's most likely going to be accurate. But here you're going to see a statement ending balance, and it's going to subtract the amount that's been cleared by the bank, and then it'll take the beginning balance and subtract the payments and deposits, and whatever the difference is, it'll come up here. And the goal is to have a $0 difference. You want what's in QuickBooks to be balanced with what is on the actual statement. And then down here, you get to see the individual transactions. So QuickBooks did this automatically for us, but normally, let's say you're doing this physically, you'd be going line by line. You'd be going line by line and saying, oh, rent deposit, $2,000 on the second. We got a rent deposit, $2,000 on the second. It matches. And we do that for each single item. So reconciliation itself, pretty easy when it looks like this. It's when there's discrepancies that can make reconciliation a little trickier. And it's not so much the action of doing reconciliation, it's having to sleuth for it and go on this manhunt to find what went wrong. Sometimes you'll see transactions that weren't in the bank feed. So I'm going to give you an example. We'll leave this real quick. Let's pretend, so we posted like an advertising expense. I'm going to undo that real quick. And we're going to exclude it. Let's pretend that it didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't end up in the books. When it comes time for reconciliation, now you're going to see something's missing. There's this difference, a $300 less than what should be in the account. But actually, in this case, it means it's not there's $300 less in the account. It means there's a $300 expense missing. It's overstated. The QuickBooks is overstated. So for something that's missing, you're not going to find the answers here. So let's go back and add the transaction again. Now it's in pending. We're going to post it as advertising. You'll see we have a completed reconciliation. Some other things you might see in reconciliation, sometimes there's going to be transactions that are in QuickBooks, but they didn't come in the bank feed. For example, let's say we created an expense manually and we said it came out of Scrooge Duck Vault. We paid repair. Let's just say, make it a little different from the others. Let's say it was $700. Now, when we go back to reconciliation, okay, so if you have something that was added in QuickBooks, but it didn't go through the bank, so it's not in the bank statement at all, like the expense that we added, it'll just be blank here, and there's not going to be any icon indicating it was manually added from the banks. So if we are certain that expense was in there, then that's a problem with the bank, and we got to figure that out. However, sometimes you're going to have a completed reconciliation like this, and it's accurate even though there's a transaction that hasn't been added yet, and that might be because the clear date is that it didn't enter the bank yet. Usually you'll see this at the end of the month transactions, or someone, if it was a check, they didn't cash it yet. So that could just be an open transaction that hasn't actually made it through the bank yet. So we'll just get rid of this through here. Oh yeah, and if you If you can always click on these transactions and edit on the same line. We'll go into this one here and delete it. It'll take us to the actual transaction page. We'll just delete it from the books. Okay, so now this looks good. We can finish now and say that was a complete reconciliation. And now you'll see under the account, you'll have the beginning balance from the last reconciliation, the last statement ending date from the 31st. And if you come up here and see summary, you'll see a summary of all reconciliations, when it was reconciled, what account. And if you go history by account, you'll be able to see the report, which will show you pretty much everything we saw in the reconciliation, the checks and payments that were cleared, deposits and credits that were cleared. And you can also attach the statement. And if you select the chevron, you could print it. Okay, so that's it for reconciliation. I'm not sure why the bank shows 0 here. I don't usually manually upload for my clients, so I'm not entirely certain why it's at 0, because it does show that there's a balance here. And it may be that because there's no opening balance, it's just holding out. Anyways, from here, we have one more thing to do. And this is one of the most important things about having a bookkeeping system and staying on top of your transactions and your reconciliation, is that now that you have all this clean data that's accurate about your business's finances, you can run reports about it and turn that data into information which you can use to make intelligent decisions about business strategy. So let's go down to the reports button here. And I'm not going to go through each one of these. There's a lot. As you can see, I recommend exploring and checking out what might be useful for your business. But the 3 most important statements you need to know and should be checking regularly for your business are the balance sheet, the profit and loss statement, and one that they don't have there, the statement of cash flows. We'll scroll down here and add it. And if you're running invoices a lot, then you'll want to be looking at your accounts receivable summary. So quick overview of what these are. All right. So the first one we'll go over is profit and loss. This is basically, as it sounds, it's showing your profit or your loss for a specific time period. So it could be over a month, it could be over a quarter, or over a year. This is all your revenue minus all of the expenses for that period, which gives you the bottom line, your profit or your loss. This is a statement that your accountant's going to want to see at the end of the year to file your taxes, because this is where they get information about the income and deductible expenses. And sometimes that's treated differently in taxes depending on what kind of expenses or income they are. So yeah, you'll be wanting to look at your profit and loss at least on a monthly basis. And again, do not generate these reports until your books are reconciled. You know the information is complete and accurate. Next, we have the balance sheet. This is kind of like a snapshot of a certain day for your business. So kind of like your net worth, but it's your business. It's going to show you exactly how much, if you were to sell the business that day and like clear it all out, how much it's worth. If you take all of its assets and you sell all the assets and for exactly their book value, and you pay off all the liabilities, you'll get what's left over. It basically gives you an idea of how liquid the business is, its value, and you don't need to look at it as regularly as a profit and loss. However, I think with real estate, I would recommend looking at a balance sheet regularly, since you have a lot of properties and your assets are changing frequently. It can give you another idea of overall value in the business. So after that, you have statement of cash flows. This is just a report that's showing you all the money coming in, all the money going out. It doesn't matter if it's income from profit in the business. It could also just be cash moving from like an investor into the business, or your personal account into the business, or money that's going to pay off a credit card. So this was important to look at if you're a contractor. Again, just have a lot of money moving around really fast, and it feels like you're not making anything, and you're dependent on having cash in the bank to pay your contractors, to buy your expenses. So these are the main ones you want to look at. One thing I like a lot about QuickBooks over other bookkeeping software is how many different reports they have. And if you remember from looking at the different subscription plans, this is just like their simple list of reports. The more you pay for your plan, the more reports you seem to get. So let's look at each of these very quickly. We got profit and loss. So we're going to want to be sure about which period we're looking at. We want to look at just that month of January that all those transactions in the bank were flowing through. And you'll want to select the appropriate accounting method. And if you scroll down, you'll get to see a basic profit and loss. We have all the income from services, which we know is rent. And if you click on the amount, it'll pull up a transaction report for what was included in service, under services. And here we can see all the different forms of rent and the money we got paid that was invoiced for that damage. And then we get to see all the expenses, such as advertising and marketing fees. There's that repair fee. So you'll get to see a total for all your expenses. And once you subtract the expenses, you'll get your net operating income and then your bottom line net income. So this is the amount that Maple Street Rentals actually made in this period. So having this report handy gives you a very clear idea of how profitable the business is. So going back, we'll now look at the balance sheet. And here we'll see we have the cash in the account. You're not going to see any of the profit and loss accounts on here. We're just looking at assets, liabilities, and overall equity. So the only thing you're going to see from the profit and loss statement is the net income that came from the bottom line. Remember, on profit and loss will flow into balance sheet. And this is for the most recent date possible. Now, there is something missing here that we talked about as an example at the beginning of this course, and that's the asset of owning the property. So I want to quickly show you something that I don't think most of you should be doing, but I just want you to know this feature exists. The option to create a journal entry. And I highly guard against only creating a journal entry if you feel like you genuinely understand how debits, credits, and double entry accounting works, because everything needs to balance out. You're going to be affecting at least two accounts in the entry. Usually we make a journal entries for an adjustment. For instance, if you have a home office, instead of tracking the home office throughout the year, sometimes an accountant will just put a whole list of all the total of maybe the mortgage and utilities that you paid for your home office, the rent, and just put a total for it at the end of the year. And that can be reported through a journal entry. So let's add in the property for Maple Street. We'll just put in the name, the asset account that's going to track this. Remember, we made that account in the chart accounts. We know it's worth $300,000 as per the example. Here, we'll change the date. We'll just say it happened the first of the year. We have the $300,000 home. That's what it's worth. That's the debit side. Now we got to add in the credit side. So if we were trying to save this, you're going to get this something not quite right message because the debits and the credits need to balance. So we got to add in information to affect the other side of the account. Remember the accounting equation? Assets equals liabilities plus equity. So we have the asset, it's worth $300,000, and we said $100,000 was a down payment by the owner. And because let's say it came out of the owner's personal account, we'll just call it an owner investment because that's owner equity. And then 200,000 is going to be a mortgage. Is going to be a loan from, we'll say it's a loan from Scrooge Duck Bank, which needs its own account. It's not a bank account, it's a loan. So we have to go to long-term liabilities. And we'll just do we'll call it Scrooge Duck Vault Loan. We'll save that, which adds it to the chart of accounts. And this is going to be loan from bank. All right, so now we have debits that match the credits. We have the accounting equation intact. We're going to save this. And now when we look at the balance sheet, you can see the total is a lot more than when we started out. So since this property is owned by the business, we could see it's worth way more than just the profit it made. So again, you'll see a balance sheet showing your assets, everything the business owns, including that accounts receivable. Remember, we have an open invoice. It hasn't been paid yet, but it is due to the business. The business earned that money because it performed a service. And then we have the liabilities, including the balance on the credit card, as well as a loan to the bank. And then we have equity, which includes the owner investment for that down payment on the house, plus the net income from that first month of rent minus expenses. And then we got the total. So this is the balance sheet. And lastly, real quickly, I'll show you statement of cash flows. And here you'll see a list of all the money that moved. So we had income, we had some adjustments to certain accounts in this period. Chase Bank increased in its credit balance. We have an open accounts receivable. There was the purchase of this property, which looks, so the asset end is positive, but the cash end looks vastly different. So yeah, this is just an overview of cash going in and out of the business. And lastly, you'll see accounts receivable. If you have open invoices, they'll show you which open invoices are current, which are 1 to 30 days late, 31 to 60 days late, 61 and 90, the total. And then as with any of these reports, you can always click on the number value to get a more detailed report. So again, these reports, man, they are one of the most valuable aspects of having bookkeeping software. So I highly recommend stay on top of your books, get everything you can out of these, and you'll get to know so much more about your business than if you leave your finances to the side as like a secondary in your business. So that was a lot. I feel like I vomited so much information on you. And the reality is, this is just a drop in the bucket of all the things I could teach you about QuickBooks. But I hope that by this point in the tutorial, by this point in the course, you feel like you can set up an account, add products and clients and vendors, and send bills, track your transactions, import your bank statements or connect your bank accounts, perform a reconciliation, and run some useful and insightful reports for your business. So yeah, if any of this feels super overwhelming and you're kind of afraid you're not going to do it accurately, just so you know, I would be more than happy to do your books for you. There's a lot to know about accounting beyond just properly categorizing transactions. And sometimes a bookkeeper will know what things to look out for than just your average business owner. So I just want you to know that you have support here. Otherwise, I encourage you to continue to learn about bookkeeping, about accounting. This information is highly useful, especially if you plan on getting any kind of investments in the future in your business, funding. These are the kinds of numbers that the investors are going to expect you to know and be able to speak in this accounting language. So yeah, if you found this course useful, do give it a thumbs up. Applaud you. You did so good. You got through this course. You now know more about QuickBooks and probably most business owners. So I wish you all the best of luck with your bookkeeping and with navigating QuickBooks, and I'll see you all in the next tutorial. Take care.